prevalent in this school. This child has had her ears pierced and become infected. Let's put some medicine in your tooth now.
Oh, good. Good. And it outlines a list of goals in order of their priority as far as helping the educators to meet their objectives are concerned. And it also...
Bailey is our Assistant Superintendent for Special Services, and the Health Department falls in his chain of command, so to speak. And then Dr. Moore and Gladys Bowles work directly with Mr. Bailey. So I'm going to ask Mr. Bailey to go into this a little bit more detail and then take it in its normal progression. And if
Well, 49ers are well known for their excellent pass protection. They've got some fine linemen who block very well. They have the quarterback experience that enables them to dump the ball into the backs and prevent the trap. So I don't see it to be a game in which we're going to trap a lot. And hopefully we'll be able to cover better than we have.
Coach, did you have a chance to watch Atlanta and Washington last night?
I only had a chance to watch it from spots. I didn't have time to watch the whole game, no.
Were you surprised at all at the outcome?
No, I wasn't surprised. I didn't think that Atlanta was strong enough to stop a team like Washington unless the breaks just happened to go or Washington wasn't playing well. And Washington has not played poorly except once this year that I know of, and they didn't play poorly last night.
Coach, just how important is a win for you this Thursday?
It's very essential for us. Our chance to win the Eastern Division lies in a win Thursday. If we lose Thursday, I think mathematically we're still in it, but we probably won't ever win the East that way. We still have a chance for the playoff route by even losing Thursday.
Coach Dick Nolan probably has a little incentive trying to beat his former boss. Do you have that same incentive to make sure that your pupil does not upset you?
Well, of course, I'd like to see Dick do well, but mostly on other days than this one. No, we'll do everything we can to beat him. He'll do everything he can to beat us.
he, of course, threw 5 touchdown passes, and he's gaining a lot more confidence as he goes along. He's improved every game, and he's just very poised guy and a very tough individual. He stays in there very tough, and he's, like I say, throwing the ball real well.
Do your old ties with Dallas give you any added incentive to want to win?
Well, we've lost to him twice in 2 championships, so that ought to be an incentive, you know, to win. You know, Dallas is a good football team, and we're both in a situation now where we're, you know, fighting for that lead in our divisions. There's a lot of things I think that are involved in it. Probably injuries are one thing that's caused it, because we had about 5 or 6 starters that didn't really start the season, didn't play during the preseason the last 4 weeks, you know, because of injuries, shoulders and so forth. And then they started out right away into the season, which they missed all that time. This is, I think, probably one of the main reasons.
Just going to make a brief statement.
Committee.
Is this to raise money for defense too?
That's one of the
appeals and that kind of.
It's a bit different. I think that an error has been made by Judge.
Check down on the counter there, the teller's cage, and said, "Cash this check." And the teller said, "Well, I need to see some identity."
Folks, all I want to say is that we went through a period, and it's
A check that he wanted to get cashed, so he went to the local bank and walked up to the tellers. Then
Glad to have you here. Have a seat over here in the middle of the much. And we will wire you for sound. I understand you have a luncheon to go to and
to meet with a man who is now in Gentle countries. We have in Jerusalem 2/3 of the Jews are refugees from Arab countries. They came without. Well.
The people are the ones who supposedly run the government, not the judges. And I think enough pressure could be put on these judges, enough information could be given people so that they could see what is right and what is wrong and realize that these are injustices that have been inflicted on these wonderful, dedicated, sensitive people who have gone forward to aid their fellow man.
If you're referring to making marijuana either a misdemeanor for simple possession of marijuana in the state level, I don't think it'll have any effect on it for this reason. Most of the people we have arrested, now I'll say 85% of the narcotics and hard narcotic traffickers, heroin, morphine, cocaine, also traffic in marijuana.
I think any city could be run that way. International cities so far have only brought about war. Danzig has brought about the Second World War, and Trieste has almost brought about a war. There are several other examples. This is a solution, a paper solution, very nice to be thought out at the United Nations, but the 300,000 people who live there would be in a terrible situation.
Ever before for the Cowboys?
Yes, no question about Craig's performance. He's performed very well this year and playing better than he ever has.
Why?
I think mainly because of maturity. I think that he's been through a struggle himself with Roger, and Roger, of course, took over last year and led us to Super Bowl, and now Craig has his chance, and he approaches it a little different now. He's overcome the nervousness that came at first for him when he was taking over. Now he's solid, he knows he can do it, and he's performing well.
That's a sad commentary for many of the people that are saying that marijuana has no correlation or relation to hard narcotics abuse and traffic, but it is not true in our case. It does have a definite relationship.
You find people that use marijuana are inclined to crime?
Yes, and by that I mean this. they are inclined to crime for the reason that most of the people that use marijuana also eventually use heroin. Again, many of the sociologists disagree with me on that. But from our investigations, what we found out, that's the case. When they use heroin, they cannot support a $25 to $200 a day habit buying dope without resorting to crime. It's an impossibility. Nobody's got that kind of money.
To be amended to allow the district to change its method of election of trustees from the at-large system to one of single-member districts. And it is not the intent of this motion to deal with the length of term or the date of election of the Dallas School Board.
I'm not going to discuss the details. An assessment is being made of that. And sometimes the first 2 or 3 reports are in error. And I've tried to maintain the greatest degree of credibility for the Department of Defense during these past 4 years. And if I were to make a comment based on the preliminary reports, it could be wrong.
If no other way is left, if I must fight, then I assure you I will.
Russell H. Bigel, B-I-E-G-E-L.
Bigel. I suggest that every student have equal access to every school in this system, and that whatever transportation necessary to make this a reality be provided. If this plan is not acceptable, then I think further massive busing should be resisted at all costs.
in operation. Those that were leaving for what all they had given. More people. Man's job transfers him out of the city. I also told them if they reconsidered, we'd be glad to have them back at any time. And I meant it, too.
Woodmont Street. Good stuff out. Okay.
Well, it was a very emotional football game. I really believe that our players rallied behind some of the criticism that had been directed towards me during the week and my coaching staff, and it was the most satisfying victory to defeat Arkansas on the Hills after having gone since 1954 and pulling this feat off.
Given that criticism, Coach, just how big was this victory for you?
Well, the victory was very well timed, I'll put it that way. We needed the victory after having lost 3 very close, tough football games in the conference race, and I just can't say enough for the efforts of our young ball club and my coaching staff. My coaching staff did an excellent job in preparing the team, and we needed the victory very much, and we got it.
Tell us the story of what happened before the game and then right after the game.
Well, actually, going into the ball game, it looked like everything was in the University of Arkansas's favor. They had their 50th homecoming. They had a group of All-Americans visiting with members of the team and talking to them about their tradition and particularly the winning streak over SMU. The Board of Trustees saw fit to extend the contract to Coach Brawls and give him a pay raise. The Liberty Bowl got back into Arkansas's plans by tentatively extending an invitation to play in the Liberty Bowl if they defeat SMU. It looked like everything was really going against us, but players on the field took care of Arkansas, and It was strictly a team win, offensively and defensively.
You enjoyed the ride after the game?
We had a rather long ride after the game. We went to Fayetteville to take off, then to Fort Smith.
I'm not talking about that ride.
Which ride?
You got a personal ride.
Oh, Dick, you know, that's the first ride I've had this year, and it was a very enjoyable ride after the game. I was a little embarrassed, though. Our players got me up on their shoulders, and they were escorting me around the field, and I couldn't get them to let me down so I could go shake hands with Coach Brawl. But I finally did.
What about Baylor coming up this week? Will the team be able to get up again after having such an emotional victory over Arkansas?
This late in the season, when the championship is not at stake, I think it's always difficult for teams to get up. But if I ever had a ball club that could play 2 remaining games from an emotional standpoint, I think it's the 1972 Mustangs. I've got a lot of character on the ball club. I've got a lot of talent. I've got a lot of young people that are improving each week. And I look for SMU and Baylor to play an exceptionally good football game this Saturday in the Cotton Bowl.
Without downgrading the work of the reserves, which I do not intend to do because they have been extremely valuable to us, been extremely helpful to us, we carry on our functions with our force of sworn officers, assisted ably, I might add, by the reserve force. However, we can still carry on our programs. Now, in the area of special events where they've augmented us by numbers, yes, this will hurt, and it will be necessary for us to bring more officers on duty in order to police special events.
This man wanted to go to jail. He deliberately got drunk and gave himself up so he could come back to work in the kitchen here at the Dallas City Jail and eat the food that this man fixes. Jail chef Levi Rowland won't admit that he drives men to drink, but he can prove that his good food drives former prisoners back into jail. Rowland has a talent for turning common foods into uncommon dishes. As he told me, most people don't realize, for instance, what goes into Golden Gate bean salad, but all you need is beans to call it that. His budget allows each prisoner only 45 cents worth of food a day, but in the past 2 years, Rowland has been providing them 3 meals. Before he came, they only got 2. Although Rowland has cooked for some of Dallas's finest restaurants, he told me that after 25 years, he got tired of 16-hour workdays and no appreciation. He says he loves cooking for prisoners because they brag a lot and don't give him any kickback. As long as I get the taste right, he says, they're satisfied. So one thing is sure. If there can be any joy in going back to jail, it's going back to Levi Rowland's food. Martha McIntyre, Channel 8 News on the Move.
Whatever his critics may have said of him in life, or might say of him in history, would these same critics be able to claim an equal measure of courage? On the more positive side, he was a man who loved life and people and his family and God and nature and politics and his country, and he dared to show it in a way that his countrymen could recognize, acknowledge, and identify with, whether critic or colleague. And in so doing, John Fitzgerald Kennedy became an inspiration for many Americans in his lifetime and for generations of Americans yet to come.
The Reverend Monsignor Erbrick, who organized this service today, says that probably it will become something of the past eventually because the crowds keep getting a little smaller and a little smaller. He's somewhat disappointed about the number of people who came out today. Perhaps the crowning blow of all of this is that those who organized this service were depending on the city of Dallas to supply a wreath, as they have each year, for the mayor to lay on the memorial. But someone at the city slipped up, and they didn't send a wreath either, so there was none. But of course, the memory of John F. Kennedy will live on. There were memorial services held in many other cities, including, of course, in Washington, D.C. today. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move at the Kennedy Memorial.
Report going public, it's very difficult ever to re-explain or to explain the fact that the first report might have been wrong. We've had an assessment going on and the announcement will be made in Saigon as soon as this assessment has been completed.
President John Leatherberry said at the end of the last meeting on the busing issue that he felt the points had all been made and that it remained now just to see whether his administrative staff could devise a federally acceptable plan which board members could also accept. Still, some citizens wanted to be heard today and were given their chance.
A thought which may not even be feasible of the board resigning in favor of a special election which will express the current feeling of this community as regards busing and that will preclude any further encroachment on the educational process for social reasons.
Right now we're just talking about the plan. The second stage of, I'll assure you before I go to jail, I'll resign.
There still is no definite word on when the board will get their staff recommendations on what to do next in terms of meeting court dictates for busing Fort Worth students. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News, reporting. Except to say that the building was virtually gutted, it is not yet certain exactly how much dollar value damage was done to the facility on Sylvania Avenue. A workman told fire investigators at the scene that he had plugged in a grinding machine, turned around, and heard a pop behind him. Within seconds, he said, smoke and fire roared through the area, for a time threatening a stockpile of barrels full of paint thinner. J.W. Chestand was just outside the door when a cloud of smoke engulfed him.
Now, we were just standing there loading the car, and the truck just got it loaded, and all at once, some fellas run out over there and said the fire, and we looked up, and the boom of smoke came out, and the blaze came out behind it.
In spite of the rapid spread of fire and heat through the block-long building, there are no reports of personal injuries. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News, reporting.
The only description I know of is that he was a white male and maybe short and stocky, and that's the only description I know at this point.
Do you have any idea how much money was taken, sir, at this time?
I don't have the exact amount, but it was a relatively small amount of money that was taken.
I see that the people found a coat. Was that the particular coat the individual was wearing?
I don't know. I understand that possibly he was wearing a blue coat, and they think it might have been.
All right.
Did he ever show a weapon?
Not to my knowledge that he didn't. I haven't heard that he did.
Of the past. She cried at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. Unto you, O men, I call.
Should only serve 4 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
That's what I was asking. Keep asking.
It was embarrassing.